Hello, and welcome back to Baby Elias's stories. We now return to Eve by Iris Johansen. Chapter 12. 3:40 a.m. Colonel Nate Queen lived in an impressive condo in the trendy area of Alexandria, Virginia, outside Washington, D.C. "Nice address," Joe said. "You wouldn't think the military would pay this well." "Private funds? Do you want me to go in and get him?" Catherine asked Joe, as they drew up before the building. "He'll be surprised to see me, but he won't go for the jugular." "Are you protecting me, Catherine?" Joe asked. "Or don't you want me to take out one of your prize contacts?" "Both," she grinned at him. "You're such a gentle soul that I wouldn't want Queen to think that he'd have a chance with you. That could be fatal." She got out of the car. "But you don't seem amenable. Suppose I take out the lock, then disable the alarm while you go up and start the discussion with Queen. Good cop, bad cop?" "Queen will probably be too savvy for that. We'll see how it goes." Joe moved toward the front door. Catherine was able to unlock the door for him a few minutes later. "Give me a minute." She went around the side of the building, traced the alarm wire, and disabled it. When she came back around to the front, Joe had already gone inside and disappeared. It didn't surprise her. She was right behind him, moving silently through the foyer and up the stairs. She heard a curse, then a solid thump from one of the bedrooms on the second floor. Silence was clearly no longer necessary. She took the rest of the steps two at a time and reached the open door of the bedroom seconds later. Nate Queen was naked, on the floor beside the bed, and Joe was straddling him, his hands around Queen's throat. A stream of obscenities was issuing from Queen's mouth. "Shut up," Joe said between his teeth. "I'm not ready for you to talk yet. You're not saying the words I want to hear." Joe was mad as hell. Time to enter the scenario before Joe's grip on Queen's throat proved lethal. Catherine turned on the overhead light. "Let him up, Joe. We wouldn't want him to catch cold." Her gaze wandered further down on Queen's naked body, or suffer a serious inferiority complex. She picked up a brown robe from the chair and dropped it down on Queen's face. "Move carefully, Queen. My friend's not in a good mood." "Or don't." Joe released Queen and got off him. I'd just as soon that you didn't." He glanced at Catherine. "He gave me a few problems. He was awake. You'd think he was expecting us." "Not you." "Do you think I'd be scared of you?" Queen jerked the robe off his face and sat up. His heavy-jawed face was flushed with rage as he glanced at Catherine. "What is this, bitch? Since when do you bring your scum to—" "Careful," Catherine said. "He brought me. I'm just here to try to keep you alive long enough to get the information we need. It's not going to be easy for me. I'm almost as angry with you as he is." "We're wasting time." Joe dug his hand in Queen's hair and pulled him toward the chair a few feet away. When Queen began to struggle, he punched him in the stomach, then heaved him into the chair. "John Gallo, tell me where he is now." Queen's expression changed, became wary. "Catherine, I told you that I couldn't help you out. My source folded on me." "I heard what you told me," Catherine said. I didn't believe you then. I sure as hell don't believe you now. You're dirty, Queen. You're working hand in glove with Gallo. Talk. Go screw yourself! Joe's hand was suddenly on his throat, his thumbs on the carotid muscles. Be respectful, Queen. You're not going to die yet, but you'll hurt. I'm really good at pain. Queen's face was turning beet red, and his eyes were bulging. Catherine, stop him from... Let him breathe, Joe, at least for a minute or so. What are you doing to me? Queen gasped. You're a government agent, Catherine. We're on the same side. I'm not on your side, Catherine said. You lied to me. I want to know where Gallo took Eve Duncan. Eve Duncan? Queen moistened his lips. I don't know anything about her or Gallo. Gallo knows a lot about you. He told Eve that he owned you. That son of a bitch. Queen's expression turned ugly. Crazy, arrogant bastard. Someday I'm going to find a way to cut his heart out. Stand in line, Joe said. The problem may be moot. Where's Eve Duncan? I told you, I don't know anything about. His head snapped back as Joe's fist crashed into his jaw. Shit! He shook his head to clear it. He never mentioned Eve Duncan. You were the one who was causing problems. Catherine, I thought he might go after you. And you didn't warn me? I tried to convince him to leave you to me. He was gazing at Joe. How could I know he'd go after her? It was Catherine who was stirring up the trouble. Catherine can take care of herself. Where is John Gallo? He shook his head. I can't talk about him. I'd lose my job in a heartbeat. Joe leaned forward, his face close to Queen's. Do you know what you'll lose if you don't talk? He said softly. I'll cut off your dick and stuff it where the sun don't shine. Where the sun doesn't shine. Joe, don't bother your head with little things, Catherine said, straight-faced. I have a friend in Hong Kong who taught me much more sophisticated methods to get what we need. Don't get involved in this, Catherine, Queen said. Gallo is our problem. We'll deal with him. You didn't deal with him, Joe said. Now it's up to us. Where is he? Catherine asked softly. I don't think he'll hurt her. But you don't know. He's been interested enough to insist we give him reports on her, he added quickly. But he never made a move. Until now, Joe bit out. You said he was crazy. What made you think he wouldn't be volatile as hell? Our psych people think that he's keeping it under control these days. Though they say he has signs of dissociative identity disorder. A split personality. He stared at Catherine accusingly. Why couldn't you leave it alone? Where is he, Queen? You mentioned Utah. A lie? He shook his head. I was thinking about turning you loose on him. I thought maybe I could convince my superiors to let you at him. I'm sick to death of Gallo. Where in Utah? Queen didn't answer. You will tell me, Queen, Joe said softly. You'll tell me where he is, how to get to him, and everything else you know. You'll either tell me now or later. You'll be a lot clearer and more coherent if you choose now. Queen glanced at Catherine. Stop him, or I'll make things so hot for you that the CIA will throw your ass out so fast your head will spin. Eve's my friend, Queen. She held his gaze. You made a mistake. Correct it, and you'll get out of this without too much damage. Where is Gallo? His glance shifted from her face to Joe's. Then he looked away. Oh, what the hell? What do I care? I'm not going to take any more punishment to protect that bastard. Gallo has a place in Mascall, Utah. A big compound in the mountains. If he has Eve Duncan, he probably took her there. I'll give you the address, but it's guarded as tight as Fort Knox. You're not going to get in. I want to know everything you can tell me about access, Catherine said. We'll get in. Are you going to tell Gallo that I told you? He was afraid, Catherine realized. Queen wasn't a coward. Gallo must be formidable. The knowledge was making her uneasy. It may not be necessary. No, you can't kill him, Queen said. He has to stay alive. We're safe as long as he's alive. Meaning your branch of Army intelligence? Joe asked. Then you may all start having to live on the edge. He took a step back from Queen. I want an address, a map, and anything else I can use against Gallo. He picked up the robe on the floor and threw it to Queen. Start moving. I have to get to my office downstairs. Queen shrugged into his robe. I have a map we made of his compound about a year ago. At least what we knew about it. He's a secretive bastard. Now why would you want to go to that trouble? Catherine said. Planning a raid? Or were you going for extermination? She followed him as he left the bedroom. I'd say a raid. Gallo must have something on you. You'd want to get in and make sure the evidence wasn't left carelessly about if something unforeseen happened to him. She glanced over her shoulder. Joe was going through the drawers on the nightstand. Smart move. Queen might want to keep anything of importance close to him. She followed Queen down the stairs. What does he have on you? Screw you! I'm giving you what you want. That's all you'll get from me. He turned on the light in the office. I can still get out of this if I work it right. And who knows? Gallo may kill you. You can always hope. She watched him go over to the desk and unlock the drawers. But you better hope Eve is still alive when we get there. Otherwise, Joe is going to explode and no one may come out alive. He'll go nuts. Another one? Queen asked sourly. I'm used to dealing with nutsos after Gallo. Are you? Why deal with Gallo? Why not just lock him up and throw away the key? She tilted her head. Oh, that's right. You did that, didn't you? But the North Koreans decided to keep that key. He volunteered, Queen said defensively. He was a ranger. He knew that going in on that mission was dangerous. He made the choice. He was there for a long time. You couldn't arrange a trade. It wouldn't have been wise. If we'd acknowledged Gallo, then we'd have had to make awkward explanations. My God! Horrified, his lips curled. Why? You know how it works. You know what you have to do to get the job done. Yes, Catherine knew, but this was nasty beyond belief. But he escaped. Did you at least help? He didn't answer. I have the map here. He pulled out a folded paper and pushed it across the desk. A few possible scenarios that we thought might work to take him down. Did you help him escape? She repeated. It would have been too risky, he scowled. He made out all right. After he reached the coast, he was picked up and taken to Tokyo. He had good medical attention. What kind of shape was he in? Why are you asking? Why do you care? Here's your target. He's your target. You said he was crazy. If he's crazy, he's a threat to Eve. I have to know how crazy. And why? What will trigger him? He was half starved. He was in solitary for the first 2 years. He was tortured. No permanent physical damage that the doctors could tell. Physical? Mental? Hallucinations, periods of total withdrawal, nightmares, episodes of uncontrollable rage. After 6 months, we convinced the doctors that he was well enough to be released into our custody. Why would you do that? Why would you want to do that? Why not leave him in the hospital? It wouldn't have been smart. Why not? When he was delusional, he was indiscreet. He raved like a lunatic. We couldn't afford for the Koreans to know about his mission. Washington would have been embarrassed. So you took him away from medical care. What did you do with him? We put him back doing the work he'd been trained to do. He was a ranger. As ill and irrational as you say he was, he performed very well. We were surprised. She was studying his expression. You sent him out to get killed, she said softly. He was an inconvenience, and you wanted him out of your path. Suicide missions. Ridiculous. He survived them, didn't he? She just looked at him. See how sympathetic you are when he has his knife to your throat, Queen said bitterly. Or when you find Eve Duncan in a gully in those mountains. I'm not sympathetic. She crossed the room and stuffed the map in her pocket. I just get sick to my stomach with all of us sometimes. Do you have it? Joe was standing behind her. Yes, I was about to get rid of him. Queen stiffened. No, I'm not going to kill you. Catherine came around the desk. As you said, it wouldn't be smart. We've all got to be practical and smart, don't we? Though I'd love to take you out. I have a hunch you cave too easily and are using us to do your dirty work. But I'll resist the temptation. Just can't let you cause us any trouble. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a hypodermic. Fight me, and you'll end up with air in your bloodstream and a possible embolism. Otherwise, it's 14 hours of sleep. Don't do this. Take your choice. She plunged the needle into his neck. 2 seconds later, Queen collapsed on the desk. You came prepared, Joe said. I usually am. My teacher, Hu Chang, always preferred potions to brute force. She looked down at Queen. Though I might have preferred to use pain instead. Queen is a slime ball. What they did to Gallo was very ugly. Ask me if I care. Gallo has Eve. She nodded. And we have 14 hours before we have to worry about army intelligence. She turned toward the door. And a few hours will be taken up just getting to Utah. We'd better get moving. On the way to meet you, I contacted the pilot I used when we flew to Russia. I thought we might need him. You remember Dorsey? He nodded. How quick can he get here? He was in Miami. He should be at Reagan National Airport by the time we drive there. Once we're on the plane, we'll look over Queen's map and suggested plans of entry and see which one we think will work. He caved quicker than I thought he would. Joe's tone was disappointed. Too bad. He wanted to get away from dealing with Gallo. She moved toward the door, and he was willing to get in hot water with his superiors to do it. They're handling Gallo with kid gloves. He's definitely got the upper hand. They're not about to help us. They don't have to help us. He opened the door of the car. They just have to stay out of our way. Someone was in the room. Eve woke, her heart pounding, her gaze wildly searching the darkness. It's okay, John Gallo said. You're safe. It's just me. She could see him, only a dark shadow, sitting on the big chair by the window. She drew a long breath and sat up in bed. And that's supposed to give me a sense of security? What are you doing here? Nothing carnal, though it's natural that you should think of that. It was the bedrock of what we were together. Not anymore. I'm not as sure as you are. I still feel a stirring when I look at you. I don't know if it's memory or imagining how it would be now, but that's not why I'm here. I'm going to turn on the lamp. No, don't. The darkness is easier for me. He paused. I'm naturally defensive, and I need to close everything out. But what I'm going to say, or I won't say it. Ask me about Bonnie. Her every muscle stiffened. Did you kill her? I did not. Then what were you doing in Atlanta that month? I wanted to see her. You knew about her? Your Uncle Ted told you about Bonnie? No, he died while I was in prison. If he wrote me, I never got the letters. I wish I could have been with him at the end. I loved him. There wouldn't have been letters. The army reported you dead. I know it was an exaggeration, but not much of one. How did you know about Bonnie? She repeated. How did you know I'd had your child? I didn't know. I wasn't sure. He leaned back in the chair. God, I'm sorry, Eve. I promised I'd protect you. I didn't let you. I was too full of my own independence and made a stupid mistake. She paused. But it wasn't a mistake. Bonnie was. If I hadn't given life to her, that would have been the mistake. She was the happiest, most loving little girl I've ever known. But it wasn't easy for you. What difference does that make? She was here. I had her with me for 7 years. Do you know what a miracle that is? Shit. He was suddenly across the room and kneeling on the floor by the bed. No, I don't know anything about miracles. Or maybe I do. His voice was muffled against the bed. Maybe you were a miracle, Eve. I was lost and you gave me something. Yeah, it was sex. But I think maybe it was leading somewhere else. We were just afraid to follow it. So we lost it. And now it's too late. Is it? I guess it is. But it's not finished. I don't know if it will ever be finished. Not now. Not after Bonnie. John, you didn't even know Bonnie. Didn't I? He laid his cheek on her hand lying on the bed. After I was caught and thrown into that prison, it was like being smothered alive. I reached out and tried to think of anything that would take me out of there. I thought of my uncle and the good times we had. And I thought of you, Eve. Sexual daydreams? Sure, some of them. But not all of them. Sometimes it was like being in a cool, clean lake. Everything around me was hot and dirty and full of pain. But you were none of those things. He was silent for a long moment. But as time passed, it got worse. They did things to me that made me. I couldn't hold on to Uncle Ted or you. I think I knew I was dying. John, I'm not trying to make you feel sorry for me. I just have to tell you this, and you have to know it all. It was about 3 years after I was captured that I started to dream about Bonnie. She froze in shock. You don't believe me? How could you? Okay, I dreamed about a little girl, red curly hair, hazel eyes. She was a toddler in the first dream, happy, smiling. It made me feel, I don't know, but I could hold on to her. I didn't drift away. She saved me. How? Often did you have that dream? She asked unevenly. Every night, I think. Sometimes I didn't know whether it was night or day. I just closed my eyes and she'd be there. She seemed to get older. And she'd talk to me. About what? He shook his head. Just things. Once she was starting school and was excited. Sometimes she'd sing me songs that she learned. One song she liked a lot. Something about all the pretty little horses. Other times she'd just sit and smile at me. I think she knew when I was too bad off to talk to her. All the pretty little horses? How often had Eve sung that song to Bonnie? Dear God, she had sung it to her the night before Bonnie was taken. She asked unsteadily. And she told you her name was Bonnie? No. After a while I just knew. He paused. Just as I knew she was a part of you and of me. Are you lying to me, John? Her voice was shaking. If you are, may you burn in hell. I was burning in hell. I knew I was going crazy. The only thing that kept me sane was that little girl who sang and smiled and never once asked me one question about where I was or what was happening to me. Because she knew that I could never answer her. She closed her eyes to keep back the tears. When did the dreams stop? About a month after I reached Tokyo. I was still in the hospital fighting fever and raving with delusions. Then she wasn't there any longer. I tried to tell myself that she was just part of the craziness, but I knew she was real. I'd heard of weird stuff happening in wartime, wives visiting husbands at the front, telling them things, stuff like that. Astral projection, they call it, but it wasn't like that. She was there. She was real. She was mine. I got scared. I had to make sure that she wasn't a delusion too, because that would mean that I was truly insane. After they released me, I went back to Atlanta. You'd moved from the old housing development to a house on Morningside. Yes, I wanted Bonnie out of the projects. It was a pretty house, old, but pink geraniums were hanging from the front porch. I stayed across the street and watched until she came home from school. She was wearing a gold-plated top and jeans and some kind of sparkly fairy barret to hold her hair back. To hold back her hair. You came out to the bus stop to meet her and you took her hand. You smiled down at her and I knew that you both were going to be all right. You were going to college. Your mother was straightened out and you loved that kid. You were going to have everything you ever wanted. You certainly didn't need me. I was sick and half crazy, and I'd have been more of a burden than the child I'd given you. No, I didn't need you, she said unevenly, but I wouldn't have sent you away. Pity? He shook his head. I couldn't have taken it. Besides, I had to go. Queen and his buddies had a dozen jobs waiting for me overseas. He added bitterly. I was in demand, so I left Atlanta and didn't come back to the U.S. for over 3 years. You know what happened during those 3 years. She was kidnapped about a month after I saw her, and I didn't even know until I'd returned to the country. Do you know how often I'd wish that I'd gone up to you that day at Morningside? Maybe I could have done something, stopped it. Eve could feel its pain, deep, ragged, vibrating in the darkness. She disappeared right before our eyes, Eve said unsteadily. 1 minute she was there. The next she was gone, lost in the crowd at that park. Could you have done more than Sandra or me? I don't know. Life's funny. Sometimes you move a piece and everything changes. It's a question that has haunted me. It haunts all of us. It took me a long time, but now I accept that it's the man who killed her who is to blame, not me. Her hand reached out and gently touched his hair. And not you, John. I haven't reached that point yet. I didn't protect you. I didn't protect her. That leaves me 0 for 2. He caught her hand and held it tightly. But when I came back and found about Bonnie, it blew me away. I was still balanced on the edge and it threw me down into the pit. When I fought my way out, it still took me a long time to come back. His hand tightened. I wanted to kill someone, but there wasn't anyone to kill, so I went looking. So did I. I know. You'd think one of us would have been able to find him in all these years. He paused. But I think I'm coming close, Eve. I promise I'll get him for you. She tensed. Who? Tell me who? So that I can get you killed too? He shook his head. I'm a great destroyer, Eve, but I'm not going to destroy you. I've done enough to you. Who is it? Black? His lips were warm as he brushed them against her palm, then gently put her hand back on the bed. You took care of our Bonnie all those years. He got to his feet. Let me do this for her now. The hell I will. Now that's the Eve I remember. He turned and moved toward the door. The burn. He wasn't going to tell her. He was just going to leave her in turmoil and bewilderment. But there was one thing she had to know. John. He stopped as he opened the door, a dark shadow outlined by the lights from the hall. Did you... She stopped, then went on. I know you said that your dreams of Bonnie stopped in that Tokyo hospital. But later, she had to get it out. Did you ever dream of Bonnie after she was taken? Silence. He stood there, his head bent. John. Yes, he said hoarsely. The door shut behind him. She closed her eyes as the tears slowly started to run down her cheeks. Magical. The nurse had told Eve when she brought Bonnie to her at the hospital. And Eve had always known that Bonnie was special. She had not known how special until that moment. So many questions. How had Bonnie managed to reach out to save the father she had never known? She had never mentioned any dreams to Eve. Was that contact with him on a separate level? Had Bonnie even realized it herself in her daily life with Eve? And Bonnie was still a presence in his life, still standing guard over John Gallo as she did with Eve. She had reached out, comforting, loving, saving, and Eve had never known it was happening. Bonnie, she whispered. Why, baby? She huddled there, remembering John's words, his voice, the pain that had surrounded him and reached out and enveloped her. In the darkness, she had not been able to see a single expression, but she had known every emotion he was feeling and believed every word he spoke was true. It had created a bond with him enormously stronger than any she had known when she was that 16-year-old fighting her way out of the projects. And that bond was Bonnie. Catherine and Joe got out of their rental car in the foothills halfway up the mountain, and Catherine spread the map on the hood of the vehicle. We can bypass this checkpoint, Catherine pointed to the square box drawn on the map. If we go around the mountain route above the house, we'll still have to chance the guard just inside the gate, but it's better than having to do both. She traced the box to the side entrance. Then we can get in here if we can disable the alarm. Joe looked up at the huge red wood and glass house perched on the side of the mountain. What time is it? 4:35. Queen won't wake up and be in a position to bother us for another 3 hours, she added, unless someone goes to his place looking for him. That's always a possibility. She was frowning down at the map. I can take out the video cameras indicated on the map, but Queen wasn't sure the map was entirely accurate. If Gallo is as smart as they think he is, then he'd have some cameras well hidden. I wish we had time to do our own search. She held up her hand. I know we don't. We have to get in and find Eve. If she's there, if Queen guessed right about Gallo's bringing her here. Joe was looking at the upper floor of the house. 2 bedrooms on the main floor near the gate, near the garage area. They're small, maybe servants' quarters. 4 bedrooms on the top level. Eve will probably be in one of them. I hope, Joe thought desperately. Who knew what the crazy son of a bitch would do with her? The clock was ticking, and he needed to find her. Once we get inside, I'll take the bedrooms on the upper level. You check out the ones near the garage. Catherine nodded. And keep cool, Joe. I know you're mad as hell, but Eve won't thank us if we kill Gallo when she thinks she can get information out of him. Ask me if I care. He was moving up the mountain. I'll be careful because I want to keep Eve alive, but there's no way I'll stay cool. Gallo is going down. The buzzer went off on the security pad on the nightstand in Gallo's bedroom. South slope. He reached over and activated the video camera. No picture. His phone rang. I've got it, Hanks, he said when he picked up. Any other alarms? Not yet. 2 cameras on the south slope have been disabled. They missed this one. We should have a visual when the courtyard C2 picks them up. They're pretty good, and I figure that they'll get C1 and take it out. But C2 is impossible to detect unless you know where to look. Shall I get a team to head up the slope and intercept? He thought about it. It could be that Queen had gotten impatient and was trying for a strike. But there was another possibility. No, let them reach the courtyard. I'll make a decision then. He hung up and quickly dressed. The buzzer sounded again. C2 camera. He pressed the video. 2 figures, dark clothes, moving swiftly. He zeroed in on them. A woman, dark hair, pulled back, slightly exotic features. A man, tall, brown hair, dark eyes. He'd seen photos of that face. Joe Quinn. The woman must be Catherine Ling. Hanks phoned. They're right on top of you. What do we do? Take them out. Damn it, I'm backed in a corner, Gallo thought. He couldn't risk Joe Quinn getting killed, and he couldn't even guarantee to control the situation once Quinn erupted on the scene. No, don't touch them. I'll call you back. He had known that it might come to this when he had taken Eve, but he'd considered it worth it. What the hell? It might have been necessary anyway. The circle was closing. He had to move fast. Quinn and Catherine Ling had gotten around most of the alarms with incredible speed and accuracy. They'd be in the house in no time. He snatched the backpack he always kept ready from the closet and moved down the hall toward the guest room. Eve sat up as he threw open the door. Her eyes were wide in her pale face. What is it? It's your Joe Quinn being superhero, he said. I'd heard he was smart. I didn't realize he'd be able to move this fast. What do you mean? Where is he? Pounding on the gates. He was crossing the room toward the bed. I'll either have to kill him or bow out. I'm going to let him have the castle. Her hands clenched on the cover. I'm not going with you. I'm not asking you to come. I think we've said what had to be said. He reached in his pocket and handed her a key. Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Queen may get desperate and aggressive once they realize I've gone. You may need ammunition. She gazed at the key in her palm. I don't understand. Blackmail. He turned and moved toward the door. He'll understand even if you don't. If you don't need to use the leverage, save it for me. Believe me, I can use it. He reached in his pocket, pulled out her phone, and handed it to her. Your property. You might try to intercept your Joe Quinn. I'll try to call Hanks off, but if they come together, there might be damage. He moved quickly down the hall and down the stairs. John! Eve had followed him and was standing at the top of the stairs. She was wearing one of Judy's sweatshirts. Her red-brown hair was rumpled, her expression intense. She looked almost as young as she'd been when he'd first met her. Damn it! I'm not going to let you go without telling me about Paul Black. Where is he? Talk to me. Sorry, no more time. You'll have to be satisfied. He opened the door to the basement and ran down the stairs. She called after him. How can you say that? I'm not satisfied. He went around the corner of the landing and she was lost to view. Checked to see how close Quinn was to gaining entrance. John punched the video button on the panel by the exit door that accessed the passage to the outside. He couldn't see Joe Quinn, but Catherine Ling was almost directly beneath the camera. She was working quickly to disable the house alarm. The expression on that beautiful, exotic face was intent, totally focused. Suddenly she stopped and looked up. He inhaled sharply. She knew he was watching her. What the hell? He knew she couldn't see that camera, but she still knew. Incredible instincts. Catherine Ling was remarkable. He'd be interested to explore those instincts. Not now. No time. He keyed in the exit code for the door, and it swung open. The next moment, he was closing and locking it behind him. He pulled out his phone as he moved down the ramp that led to the outside passage.